Hello, Tom Maguire. I just want to review for you today the book A Swim in a Pond in the Rain by George Saunders. Now, before any of you think that I'm getting a bit overly intellectual reading these kinds of books, I took delivery of this today from Amazon. Jeremy Clarkson's latest, so don't worry, there's not too much chance of that. I love Clarkson stuff. I just find it pure, enjoyable, easy reading. But anyway, we'll get back to the review. So George Saunders, A Swim in a Pond in the Rain. George Saunders is a well-known novelist, short story writer. He's been teaching creative writing at Syracuse University in America for the last 20 years. And he's been doing a course in the 19th century Russian short stories, which is where this kind of book came from. So if you look this book up on Google, it's described as a literary masterclass on how to become both a better writer and reader, and what makes great stories work, and what they can tell us about how to live. And that was kind of the bit that appealed to me. Obviously, I'm very keen on personal development. So anything that kind of talks about telling us how to live, I find quite interesting. So I can't even remember how I came across this book now. But he just talks about how great fiction is really important, and I really like that. He talks about how really good fiction will always change us in some way. So once we've read a good fiction, it will have an impact on us in one way or another. And I quite like that. I think that's very true. He kind of talks about what it is that makes a story work, what makes it good, what it is that makes a reader want to keep on reading, what makes the reading experience satisfying and what doesn't. And this all kind of sounds a little bit boring, but it's not. It's really good the way he does it. He goes through these different Russian short stories, or they're actually, in the audio version, apparently they're read out by some quite famous people. I say apparently, they are. I actually listened to a little bit of the audio as well after I'd read the book. And I have to say, Keith David was absolutely superb. He's got an amazing voice. He's fantastic. Some of the others were really, really good as well. They were all good, to be fair, but I listened to a little bit of each one of them, and they all sounded really good. The books that he goes through are In the Cart by Anton Chekhov, The Singers by Turgenev. I hope I pronounced that correctly. I probably haven't. The Darling by Chekhov, Man by Leo Tolstoy, The Nose by Gogol, I think that's right, Gooseberries by Chekhov, and Elisha the Pot by Tolstoy. And so in between we get these thoughts from Saunders as we go through what he thinks of them and what we can take from them or what we might take from them. And it's just really nice. It's not the sort of book that I've read before. But it just appealed to me. I just kind of thought this is the sort of book I can read I like to read books that are very easy going sometimes, holiday type reads on the beach. I'm passionate about cars. I love Clarkson's writing. It just entertains me. There's no sort of deep thinking there, and sometimes that's quite nice. But this kind of book just kind of forces me to open my mind a little bit and try new things. And so I'd never read any of these authors' books before, so it's kind of opened that up to me. It's kind of made me feel as though I might give some of their stuff a bit more of a go, because they are kind of ever so slightly significant, obviously. So I think it'll do me good to give them a bit more of a read, and this is kind of a nice introduction. I think it kind of, I don't want to say sort of holds you by the hand, but it sort of does the way through. He says something very important, which I really liked. He says that a work of art can only surprise its audience if it genuinely surprises its creator. And I really quite like that. It's kind of this idea of getting outside of what we feel we should be doing and just being true to ourselves and kind of just going with it and just allowing things to flow and kind of trusting the process. All stuff we've kind of heard before in one way or another, but he puts it in a really interesting way in this book, I think. He talks about some of his own writings as well, where he's kind of gone down a strange path and kind of thought, what the hell is this about? And just kind of tried to have confidence and stuck with it. And I just like that. I think this is also a really good book. It's not just a book for readers, it's a book for writers, or it's not just a book for writers, it's a book for readers. But, I'm very interested in writing as well. And actually some of the tips that he gives, I just think they're really, really good. yeah, he kind of talks about, he gives the example of playing with toy bricks with his kids and just kind of going with it and just coming up with something really interesting, not trying to do anything specific, but just kind of messing around. You just let that creativeness just kind of go, and you end up making something a bit weird that's kind of got this cool little area in it, maybe, and it becomes something that you didn't expect it to become. And he says how that should be the same with writing, and I quite like that. So it's kind of unplanned, but it just kind of grows and develops, and you just kind of have to trust it. He's done a few YouTube videos as well. If you didn't want to read the book, you just want to kind of get a bit of an introduction to George Saunders, there's plenty about him on YouTube, which is quite interesting. He does a really nice video that's been quite nicely produced and put together, which is, I don't think it's very long. I think it's like 5-10 minutes, or maybe 15 minutes. I'm not sure, but it's not very long, 15 max, I would say. And he kind of uses this line in there to give us an idea of, it's a bit of a tip for writing. And he says, you know, instead of saying that Frank was an asshole because he snapped at the barista, you might kind of turn that into Frank snapped at the barista who reminded him of his dead wife. And obviously the video goes into more detail than what I'm giving you now, but I just quite liked it. It's kind of like, to anyone who's good at writing, you'll think I'm being very basic, but for me it was kind of like, oh yeah, cool, I get that. So rather than just giving this kind of banal sort of detail, it's about giving the reader a bit more credit and just kind of hinting at something, or giving them something that they can kind of get stuck into and read between the lines a little bit. So if he's snapping at the barista who reminds me of his dead wife, you immediately start to think, okay, he's got a dead wife. Okay, maybe he's he's snapping, he's being a bit of an asshole, but maybe he's got a reason to. Maybe he's actually quite a decent person who's dealing with different things. I like it. It just gets you thinking and kind of creating in a far more interesting way. Makes reading far more interesting. Check that video out. Yeah, so this book really is basically, it's described, like I say, as for readers and for writers. It's about these Russian geniuses who wrote these short stories. He breaks them down, he talks about them. It's taken from his lectures, from his 20 years of experience. You know, it's his opinion, but it's his passion as well. And it's just, like I say, it's a book that I read just because it kind of has opened my mind a little bit to new things. It's kind of expanding my horizons a little bit. Yeah, it's good. I think it's good to do that. I was driving earlier and I had the radio on, and I quite often listen to audiobooks when I'm driving, but I just had the radio on and I was just flicking through all the channels, and it was so boring. The same adverts, the same pop songs that I've heard a million times. Don't get me wrong, some pop songs are fantastic. You get the odd one come on occasionally, I absolutely love it. But for most of the time, it's just so boring. I was even trying Classic FM, there was nothing decent on there. So I just got on my phone, pulled over, of course, obviously, got on my phone and went onto YouTube and just put on some Indian music, like classical Bollywood type Indian music. I just thought just something completely different, and it was lovely. It was just really, really nice. It's a whole new experience. So I think it's really important to kind of open your mind and just try new things. And sometimes you just got to try new things for the sake of it. When I saw this book, I was in two minds, and I kind of thought, nah, that's going to be a bit pretentious. It's going to be a bit academic. You don't really like that sort of thing, really. It's a bit, leave that to the kind of kids in uni who want to kind of dissect this sort of stuff and, whatever. But sometimes you have to push yourself, I think, to try new things, and kind of, I think that's the best way to open your mind, and it can lead you down different paths. So basically, from reading this book, I think that'll make quite a big difference to the stuff that I read in the future potentially, which is good. But yeah, that's all I've got to say about it, really. I don't want to dissect any more than that. It's really, really good. I would give it between 4 and 5 stars for sure. Some people, I think, the sort of people who are fans of George Saunders will be absolutely crazy about it. But it is very good. It's a lovely book. Yeah. So thanks very much. Please keep liking, subscribing. I'll have the next one out soon. Cheers.